Welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast. So wanted to open up to hear a little bit about your why and specifically why you're out here to help job seekers.
Definitely. So when I first started out wanting to be a journalist, a lot of it had to do with giving power to people, because when you're a journalist, what you do is you tell people about the world around them. You tell them what they need to know about their daily lives. You can give them information so they go into the voting booth, pick who they want to be in office. You can give them information so they can make choices, about what health supplements are right for them, what health supplements are dangerous, things like that. And, throughout my career, I've always sort of viewed journalism like that. And when I got to LinkedIn, I thought it was a really great opportunity to do the same thing for job seekers. And when you're a journalist, you have friends and family who always ask you, hey, can you look over my resume? Can you look over your cover letter? And, this is an extension of that. So I get to tell people about what's going on in the world around them, about the job market, about the job search, about careers. And it really gives them power to, fulfill what LinkedIn hopes to do, which is give people, the power to grow in their careers and become, successful.
I love that. And I this whole thing, I promise, is not a pitch for LinkedIn. That's not why we're doing this. But I love LinkedIn. It's always been a part of my recommendations for job seekers in general. But for me, it was really a pleasure to see you do what you're doing for the job seeker community, specifically in terms of putting out content for job seekers to help them move forward. So my big idea with this episode was to get you to give some of your key insights on the things that you've learned, because I know it's a heck of a lot of things. So I think that'd be great.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that's nice about my job is that when the LinkedIn news team, because what a lot of people don't know is that LinkedIn employs about 75 plus journalists around the world. So they're all giving different news and information about what's happening in their regions, in their local languages. And when they were setting that up 7 to 8 years ago, the way they brokered it was that we would live outside of sort of the marketing bubble of the company. So the LinkedIn journalists, the LinkedIn editors were actually separate from all of that. So a lot of times when people mention LinkedIn or things like that, that's not actually part of my job. I don't have to sell LinkedIn, which is nice. So I'm just trying to give people sort of job search advice. And I think that's one of the most interesting thing about me is when I sort of get to walk the halls or when I used to get to walk the halls at work, I get to live outside that bubble. So I don't have to watch LinkedIn, which is nice.
Can I ask you about the concept of informational interviews? Because when you talk about doing things naturally, I think, for me personally, I think informational interviews are one of the most effective ways to quote unquote network. But first of all, let's define for people listening right now quickly, what is an informational interview?
Yeah, so an information interview is just that you're looking for information out of a person. So it might be about a specific company, it might be an industry, but you're not asking for a job, you're not interviewing for a position. It's specifically about you growing and learning more about something. And, it may lead to something else later on, like a job or, a job interview. But really, you're not going in there with expectations that you're going to get a referral or anything like that.
Okay, I love that. And so you're saying that is the key. It's like it's a source for information, but my mentality is that I'm not going to ask for a job at the end of it, correct?
Yeah, I don't think, especially if it's someone that you're just meeting, don't ever ask for a job at the end of it, because it's going to erase all the goodwill that you just had. As someone who's been on the other side of those, you might have a good rapport with the person, and then at the end of the interview, you all of a sudden get told, basically by this person, I'm using you. Even if, they're not going to tell you that, but that is the implication when they say, by the way, do you have a job and can you refer me for this one?
Okay.
It's almost like, imagine telling someone all about a company or about an industry. And then at the end of it, they say, I have this job in mind. I want to work here. You know nothing really about me because I've been asking all these questions about the company. And, so many people, they refer to it as going for the jugular. And I think that's what it is. It just doesn't feel like a genuine interaction.
Yeah.
And I think Dory Clark, who's fantastic, yeah, she has a rule, I believe. I hope I'm not misremembering this. Is that she doesn't ask anyone for anything for a year after they met each other. So
Yeah.
if they meet, she won't ask for anything for basically a year.
Yeah.
And that shows how long it can take to build those relationships.
I'm going to ask your advice here on how to actually set up the initial reach out question here. It's funny. I had someone mention, said, I hate the term information interview. I prefer information meeting. So I can imagine some people being like, hey, can we set up an informational interview or something like that? I personally wouldn't recommend something like that. So I just wanted to see if you had any key insights for that initial message to send people.
Yeah, I think, and this again comes sort of from my training as a journalist, is be specific, and introduce yourself to the person and just say, listen, I'm trying to, plot a career path, and I might be interested in, going into either this industry or going into this specific field. And I would like to learn more about what you do at this company, and also include some specific questions. And the reason that you ask specific questions is it shows that you're not just sort of aimlessly wandering around trying to get anyone to talk to you. You're basically showing you have skin in the game, that you've thought this through, that you're a very intelligent person who has, done some initial research. So offer some specifics, because if you do that, it'll just show them that you're serious. You're not going to waste their time. But if you just say, hey, can you just tell me, everything it's going to make them probably respond to your message, first of all. And then hopefully it'll show them that you're serious and that they'll respond. So that's my biggest suggestion, is be specific. Because even, when I was reporting for different beats, I would always start with like a detailed question sometimes. That was pretty specific, just to show them that I wasn't really messing around, and that I wasn't just some person aimlessly trying to get an interview with them. So I think being specific in your questions is important.
I love that.
And obviously during the interview too, or during the meeting.
So Andrew, let's go into your third key piece of advice here. And I want to hear about you talking about recruiters here. I know that's a big piece of the puzzle, but what is thing number 3?
Yeah, so this is actually something that I get a lot of flack with people from, is because I know recruiting is a difficult job. I know talent acquisition and even just being a hiring manager can be really difficult. So I always suggest that job seekers, they think like a recruiter, and they have some empathy for the process that they have to go through. I know that's not easy when you're a job seeker, because you're sort of feel like you're swimming upstream and against the current. But I think it helps people with their job search. And then on top of that, it helps you understand what the person on the other side of the application is going through. So, I think that's just always something that's key, is to have a mindset of like, what's happening on the other side, who's the person on the other side, even if you don't know their name or really anything about them. Just having that image of the person on the other side is really key.
They are receiving a lot of applications, and I know a lot of them are getting, we use the word weeded out, but I don't know if that technically describes what it is correctly, but filtered and sorted in such a way to where they can't get noticed through these applicant tracking systems. But do you have any key insight on how recruiters are typically processing these types of applications, and what that might imply for someone who's applying for a job?
So I think it really depends. When I went to LinkedIn's Talent Connect last year, I was able to sort of wander around and talk to a lot of recruiters, and that helped me understand a lot of what they're doing day to day. And that's why in a lot of what I write and what I do, I always really try and drive home what recruiters have to go through on the other side, because I think it helps job seekers just to understand what that is and why things are done that way. And I'm not saying, everything's great the way it works, but job recruiters, they have a lot on their plate. So a recruiter has a bunch of positions sometimes that they have to hire for. And especially now, the amount of applications they're receiving is probably just insurmountable. Like if you they have to be in control of the process, but they have to find some way to do it and do it efficiently. So, when you talk to recruiters, they will say, listen, we might have an applicant tracking system, but we don't necessarily have all the features or the functions because the company won't pay for it. So in some cases, recruiters might just have an Excel spreadsheet that they turn to. They may have files. But what's interesting about the recruiters I talk to, they do love what they do. They love the idea of being able to help people get into a career, get into their company. And I think a lot of them really are driven by the idea of bringing talent into their organization. So, they do have passion for it, but sometimes there's just so much work. So They do have to find ways to automate it. So there might be applicant tracking systems, but a lot of the people that I talk to, they do say, hey, listen, I do at least scan all the resumes that come in. I do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So, the processes vary, but ultimately there is a human on the other side, whether or not they're reading your resume completely. And then obviously there are some times when people apply, they get an automatic rejection. That's probably an applicant tracking system, especially if you do it on like a Saturday night at 11 p.m. There's probably not a recruiter or an HR person on the other side reading it. But yeah, so the processes vary, but the person on the other side is most often trying to do a good job, but they might just be overwhelmed.